All right, so we got Sophie down below up against Robert up top. Oh, yeah, of course. I know Robert as well.
Yeah, Rob's had that hat for 15 years also.
100%. Yes, yes. Plays with some of the most beat-up cards I've ever seen most of the time. Yep. That's just Robert's vibe. He, is, of course, is a phenomenal player.
A true gamer.
A true gamer, absolutely. Hopeless Nightmare to start it off for Sophie as she sends it back. And just a land and a pass for Robert.
Yeah, I think as game one is going to be very predicated on what types of cards Sophie draws. You know, where you have like if it's a lot of nowhere to runs and that kind of side of a deck, not going to be so good. But finding that first Hopeless Nightmare is so important. You know, it changes the texture of all of your cards. Now your Pixies, your Kirans, your This Towns all have this great element in this kind of control matchup. Where without that, what are you going to bounce?
Yeah,
you know.
And even if you get cards like this lockdown, you know, if Sophie can ever just pick up a turn where Robert's end step, you know, you can resolve at this town, bounce it, get these abilities at end step, and then replay them again on your next turn, you can really take advantage of a lockdown too, which lockdown's supposed to be pretty good against you, but not the catch-all be-all by any means.
Yeah, lockdown definitely a liability against the Pixie deck.
Yeah.
I think you want to turn to other methods of interaction if possible.
Do you take them all out against them?
Yeah, I think if you're like really desperate to not die early, you can leave in a few, but I, for the most part, would like to be off that.
Yeah, maybe on the draw, one or two.
Right.
On the play, be more proactive kind of thing. Yep. Makes a lot of sense. So the nightmare continues. And the dream for Sophie as she is absolutely ripping apart Robert's hand. Hopeless Nightmare number 2, and here is the Belmerk. Belmerk, a card that was starting to see play at the last Pro Tour in these Pixie decks, 1 of, 2 of here, but now that Kaido's not great, it makes a lot of sense to see a lot more Overlords, as I think this card's quite good, not only just in this deck, but just in Standard.
Yeah, giving you that card advantage at a cheaper cost, which is very, very important.
All right, picked up a Fear of Isolation and sending it back to Robert.
Yeah, so this game one could have gone a number of different ways based on Sophie's draw.
Yeah.
This is almost ideal.
Yes. Mill over the nowhere to run. Don't draw it instead. That is ideal.
Get that thing out of here.
Get lost to the old 1-drop. Not ideal, of course, when you get the 2 maps, but got to do what you got to do. And here is the way to refuel. And, I mean, this is great. If your opponent's going Hopeless Nightmare after Hopeless Nightmare, a 2-for-1 is naturally how you get out of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Pixie deck just plays this kind of simple binary game where it's just 1. Discard a card, kill one thing. Discard a card, kill one thing. And if you're able to get around that either by making multiple creatures or drawing multiple cards at a time, setting up an engine, you can be in good shape. But if you aren't able to get to that point, things can be pretty rough.
Yes, absolutely. And then if you can ever pair it with the powerful dragon where you can put a body out there that's near unkillable, you know, I mean, you can double nowhere to run it or whatever, but outside of that, it's going to be a little tricky. And you get card advantage from your big threat. That's where Robert wants to get to. From turn 5 on, powerful dragon, cast stock up from your yard.
Yeah, I would say a Shiko casting stock up would increase Rob's win percent this game by 15%.
Yeah,
20%, honestly. It is the end goal.
Absolutely. All right, big turn for Sophie. Has Robert all tapped out, no counter spells available. Let's see what she can do to capitalize. What's your ideal play here? Just more Hopeless Nightmare shenanigans?
Honestly, yeah. You really can just keep riding the train here. You know, it's Kieran and Pixie and, you know, Overlords to find more of that kind of stuff. You know, and then, of course, using this down. What makes this down so powerful is that it can obviously mess up with your opponent's stuff, but bouncing 2 of your own things is just great.
Yeah.
You know, bouncing two of your Hopeless Nightmares to recast them is awesome. So there's so many options, you know, once you find that first Nightmare to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, which is what we're seeing here.
Recurring nightmares is never fun.
Yeah.
No. If you go to sleep, you know what nightmare you're going to have. Not great.
Is some experience or?
Yes. And there is an otter coming in, and now we got a little bit of pressure. So now Robert has to mildly care about the board as well as this value engine that we have going on. And, of course, the Storm Chaser's talent can level up, find something if we milled over any kind of spell.
This is the gross part of Hopeless Nightmare where you forget that, 4 cards were discarded. 8 life was lost, too. Rob's at 10. What happened? There were no attack. There's almost no attack in this game at all.
No, it is phenomenal. And here is the classic Day of Judgment. Deal with all the creatures. Sophie has to start over now, but we got that Overlord that's coming to hang out. I don't see any spells in the yard. We didn't flip over at this town or anything like that to get that value going. So is she out of gas? If so, Robert can very much start getting back into this. But, man, Sophie would love to windmill slam another Overlord or something, but just a pass, Jim.
Yeah, so this is the spot where once Rob puts together a few 2-for-1s, kind of undo all that damage. And then this is where the damage from Hopeless Nightmare matters, because if Rob's at 10, Rob's at 8, maybe you can squeeze out a few extra points to kind of finish the game off, you know. So it is kind of cool how Pixie attacks from both fronts. You know, the newer Orzhov ones that are kind of more lockdown focused don't have that angle where they don't close the game particularly well. There are a lot of flyers in the deck and a lot more creatures, you know, the talents and so on and so forth. So chip shot damage is important here, just as important as cards. But Sophie's got some more work to do. Yeah,
like you can, you know, in those kind of decks, you can have the Pixie, the Kieran, Hopeless Nightmare draws, but, you know, it's not as easy. There's not as many Kiirans, as many Pixies, you know, when you factor in Fear of Isolation being in the deck, this town, that kind of stuff. So
and talent, too. Talent, that token attacks for 3 or 4 in every turn in this deck, you know, so... I mean, 2 or 3 maybe. 3 or 4 is a little much. Again,
3 or 4 on a good day.
Yeah, I mean, there's some maps in play. Those can help out, too.
Yeah, really a bummer to not flip over a spell when you have the talent there. When you can keep that value engine going forever, you feel a lot better. You know, like just always get up to 6 mana and be like, I will be bouncing something of yours, or I'll be bouncing 2 things of mine every other turn, and then recasting them type thing.
Yeah, definitely. This deck is quite good in the early game. It casts a lot of spells very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But having that loop as a buyout is so powerful.
And this is a buyout that you have on Hopeless Nightmare, but not great. Not a great one.
Yeah, this would be really bad if it was the only Nightmare in play.
Yeah.
Because with 2 Nightmares in play, you really want to maintain that Nightmare and keep having the option to bounce it over and over again. Like we were saying, finding the first one's so important because it stays in play.
Yeah.
Having one in play is really important, too.
And it looks like she did very much think about that, whether to sack this Hopeless Nightmare. And she drew a land, which, you know, you'd think, and maybe she's thinking, like, all right, maybe I should have sacked this. But I love not sacking it as, you know, I want you to keep that Nightmare in play so you can bounce it. But here's the play. And looks like Robert got too excited about it and wanted to cast that stock up right away. And there is the final card in hand for Sophie. It's just a go for the throat. And the powerful play from this Jeskai deck just happened.
Yeah, this is the cool part, too, where, you know, one of the things about control decks is they don't want to play a lot of creatures necessarily because part of the allure is you can turn off your opponent's removal. You know, so I'm not playing that many win conditions. I'm just going to draw cards, kill things, and when I finally cast a creature, I'll have a counter spell up, or I'll be so far ahead in cards it won't matter.
Yeah.
In this case, the exchange is just so good. Yeah, go for the Throat the Dragon, whatever.
Sure.
I got the stock up. Now it's a 3-for-1. That's fantastic, you know, so seeing the dragon near die, I'm sure Rob's not too sad about that one. Keep the stock up going, keep the cards flowing, keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Plays the Quarry Monastery land, I believe. Yeah, Quarry Mountain Monastery. That's also just a really nice one. Robert's playing 2 of those. The fact that you can go end step, you know, on your opponent's turn, activate, and play it until your next turn, like, that adds a lot of value with that land.
Yeah, it goes to show that this deck is almost more of like a Jeskai mid-range deck than a control deck.
Yeah.
It is a control deck. You know, it is playing rats and counter spells, but, like, it's not a Drago deck.
Yeah.
This is not your grandfather's control deck where you sit back and never do anything, you know. And that makes the impulse draw on this land much more palatable because in a pure control deck, that wouldn't really be that good.
Yeah.
Because you need to play the card on your turn before you say go. But in this deck, we can see, because of the fact that we're playing dragons, we're playing removal spells, we're playing more sorcery speed things, quite good.
Yep, absolutely. It's kind of a fountain port, but that adds some mana. You cannot really play fountain port in this Jeskai deck. The mana just isn't good enough. It's fine, you know, like we've been kind of talking about. But, you know, the Jeskai mana base is not perfect by any means.
Now, it is cool in Standard. These are the 2 mana bases facing off, right?
Yeah.
If you're a fast 3-color deck, you play the fast land, pain land mana base. If you're a slow 3-color deck, you play the Surveil land Verge mana base.
Yep.
You know?
I love it. I absolutely love it. Or if you're a 2-color mana base, you play Fountain Port because that card, that land is absolutely incredible. So
that one is nice.
Yeah. Give me those instant speed fish all day, Jim. All day.
Fish.
Fish. Sorry, excuse me.
That's my son says.
My bad. My bad.
Comes walking in with a bag of goldfish. Fish.
Fish. There you go.
Oh my God.
The double helix. Love it. Make sure Robert gains a ton of life here. Deals with the only main threat that Sophie had. This is, of course, a beautiful little otter that we have, but found a bunch of lands off those maps. And now you're able to attack for 1 and start bringing back Go for the Throat, but that is really all we had. That Overload really wanted to attack because, 5 damage is cool and all, but also just to flip over a spell that's meaningful that you can level 2 these Storm Chaser talents.
Yeah, the Overlord being knocked down, having to sack both Nightmares, Rob gaining 6 life that turn.
Yeah.
The avenues here, once you get into this stage of the game where making him discard all their cards, get all the resources isn't really working, it comes down to, okay, now it's damage time. Let's get a creature in, get some burn damage in with the Hopeless Nightmares, but Helix undoes that. Nightmares are gone anyway. Now it's going to be a this town game.
Yeah.
Can we find this talent? Can we get the talent going? Can we kind of get the loops going as well?
Yeah. Or if Robert doesn't have any pressure, whatsoever, Storm Chaser's talent on level 3, it doesn't come up very often, but this feels like one of those games where it could be meaningful if Robert is left on just, reactive elements here. Not the case as we get this powerful Jeskai Saga into play.
Yeah, the 5th stock up.
Yeah.
Jeskai Saga.
I mean, returning sagas with your dragon is pretty cool. But yeah, stock up just seems better to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Although the Double Strike Chapter 3 is not nothing.
Yeah.
In the matches where you do need to close the game out and get omniscience or whatever, it's a decent chunk of damage.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's see what we got here. Fear of Isolation. Interesting which one to pick up. Yeah, I think at this point I'd pick up that one too and just level up the other talent and kind of hope for the best here. Even better if you have, better in the sense that you can be mana efficient, you can do some cool stuff where you could level it up and then play the talent, get 2 otters. But looks like she is prioritizing just getting another otter into play instead of just leveling up the talent.
Yeah, it's tough, with the lockdown. I haven't even seen a lockdown yet. Lockdown's ability to kind of mop these tokens up and then reset all the mana that would be put into the talent.
Yeah.
It's tough to balance here for Sophie. Got to end this game sooner rather than later.
Yep. As
As always is true when you're playing control, like the longer the game goes, the more they're favored. So get some bodies on board and try to get this thing done.
And there is the activation of the Quarry Mountain Monastery. Get a land that you can play during your next turn. Old 5 mana, draw a card at end step. Can't complain about that for a land that also adds red mana.
Not too bad. And it comes in on tap most of the time.
Yeah.
When you're playing this Surveil Land Verge mana base, it's going to be a better mountain pretty good amount of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, great card. Love that one. And we'll see what we got going on. 5 mana. Is it dragon time? 6 mana could also be dragon time, but bigger dragon. The Otter Killer. The Meringue River region here. Okay.
No one's
fake.
No one's ever accused Rob of playing fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually would love to look back into my DCI records or whatever they are and see how many draws me and Rob had back in the day on the IQ circuit, both playing control decks all the time.
Yeah.
I'll out myself here too.
Yeah, love it. You really aged yourself by saying DCI there.
Listen, my mind is still there.
All right, I do see the river region in Robert's hand, so that was an option. But looks like we are, instead of cleaning up the otters with the regent, cleaning it up with the lockdown. And now maybe the river region. Okay, if Sophie does have a this town, bouncing the river region and the lockdown here is not so bad.
Yeah, it's a little scary. There is a significant amount of risk to putting a lot of stuff under a lockdown and then tapping out.
Yeah.
Where like all of a sudden 3 creatures come in, the talents are reset, buy back a spell immediately, cast a spell immediately, cast another spell, attack for 8.
Yeah.
So now there's a little bit of tension in this game with this lockdown sitting there. It looks good for Rob, but it can turn pretty quickly.
Definitely. And if Sophie didn't have the otters in play, then I think this play looks a lot more sketchy. Right. But at least this way you're dealing with the otters no matter what, and that's not the absolute worst, but regardless, I'm with you.
Yeah, Rob valuing the card draw over just playing the big body.
Yeah. All right, getting our Saga down once again. It's a nice one to be able to just bounce with your River Region. I like it.
Yeah, not too shabby. That card's great.
Yeah, it's a great card.
It really is very good.
Yeah. All right, and Beza comes down, gains some life. More than likely, that's all the things we're doing. But hey, that's good enough. 4/5 that gains 4 life. Sign me up.
Yeah, the life gain is so important right now in this format. There are obviously a lot of aggression going on, and being able to stabilize, kind of get back up, start going in the right direction as far as your life total is concerned is very, very important. Yeah,
I love Beza right now. You know, I think this is a card that has been great pretty much since it was printed, because it was printed to fight these mice, basically, you know? And absolutely love it right now. The combination of 4 Beza, 4 Lockdown is a good recipe for controlling the battlefield right now, and leads me to really like these control decks quite a bit. Interesting. This is a main phase replayment of list. How do you like that?
I'm a little confused.
Okay.
You know, bouncing this down. Does this down have to have 2 targets, or is it up to?
I believe it's up to, but
this bouncing the Saga is resetting it for another card.
Yeah. And just gets lost the talent that would have brought back this town ain't big enough. So about as bad as this possibly could have went for Sophie, I would think.
Yeah.
Where I think the alternative is you wait until your opponent's end step and you hope to level up a talent, get back at this town, and then you can just perpetually keep doing that. I think I would have liked to see her do that a little bit more.
Yeah, important to note that when you go to level a talent, you don't actually get the card back until the ability resolves.
Yeah.
Like the ability, it's not an ability. The ability of the talent resolves. So it has to resolve, the talent still has to be in play, and then you get your card back.
Absolutely. So Lockdown comes and cleans everything up once again, leaving Sophie with just 1 card and Robert with a stranglehold on game 1 here.
Stocking up. Base is still in play. 16 life. Looking quite good.
In his element.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Ready to win this match 101.
Rob is home. Yes.
Yeah, yes. Beza gets in there. And now it's just a trivial way of how to close out the game. Whether it's just River Regents, attack with the fish, attack with Beza, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, Rob was in a hopeless nightmare earlier. Now he's in a hopeless dream. You know,
yes.
Like, I'm not hopeless, a wonderful dream.
There we go, yeah. Hope-filled dream here for Robert.
And Sophie needs to be aware of the clock here, too. You know,
yep.
You don't want to drag this game out too long if we're, you know, looking like we're almost assuredly gone.
Yeah, at 16, I think you're just a little too far. If I'm her, I draw my card. If it's not the best thing, which I don't even know what it could be, I'd want to scoop it up too. Give yourself a chance to win 2 games.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a spot where you're in game 3.
Yeah.
And you feel that time pressure coming.
Yeah. Under the lights, you know, I mean, it can be brutal for sure when you're in the feature match area. So.
So Hopeless Nightmare really, really good against players who are on low resources. And Rob is anything but.
Yeah. Rob has been stocked up for days. But, I mean, you know, that was what? Hopeless Nightmare number 6, number 7. So doing the things Sophie wants to be doing, but just was so close to gaining a huge advantage in this game. And Robert was able to really get by whenever Sophia had any kind of turn of reprieve. You know, Robert's able to stabilize pretty quickly. There's when you know the end game is near.
Yep.
The old Lightning Helix from the yard. Snap, Lightning Bolt you, untap, attack.
Yep. Rob's just like, I got enough cards. I'll just get this thing over with.
Yep. And Rob's thinking the same thing, too. Like, I want to finish this game and make sure that if we go to a game 3, that Rob has the ability to win. Because you start game 3 with 5 minutes, Sophie could win. Robert probably couldn't, you know?
Yeah, you're seeing the control players speed up. Where, you know, the game's got to get over it now. Let's just go.
Yeah.
You know, like.
All right, that's game number 1 going to Robert Seder, our very much established SCG pro here. Let's take a look at the sideboard, though. What does Sophie Seley want to be doing up against Jeskai Control?
So this is going to help Sophie out a lot with
yes.
sideboarding. Nowhere to run, Grim Bobble, get out of here. Duress, no more lies, some counter spells. I can see Shoulder coming in as an extra threat.
Okay.
But for the most part, Duress and no more lies are the big ones.
Yeah.
Able to take that lockdown before it comes down, take that counter spell. Counterspelling a dragon is huge game. At any point, if Rob taps out 4, 5, 6 mana for a spell and gets it countered for 2 mana, that's a huge tempo swing too.
Do you ever want to Ghost Vacuum against the dragon with that just being the only thing? Like, it feels kind of medium, but I feel like, it could do a thing or two here.
It's interesting where I wouldn't want it just to stop the Snapcaster effect of a dragon.
Yeah.
However, in a longer game, Ghost Vacuum's second mode does matter. So
yeah.
6 mana, pop the vacuum. All the creatures come back as 1/1 flyers. So that can be just, an army in a can. 4 flyers. Maybe you get a pixie, bounce one of your nightmares. Maybe you get one of Rob's dragons and flash back a duress, something like that too.
Yeah.
So honestly, I don't hate vacuum here coming in.
I think it is more of the case of how many cards does Sophie need to take out than really how many that comes in. One thing that Sophie would love and, I would love to see for this matchup is maybe some of the Kaidos that you couldn't play in the main.
Yeah.
They would be phenomenal here on the play. I think I'd play 6 Kaidos against a deck like this when I'm on the play,
For sure. That one Kaido is definitely load bearing. But
yeah,
no order runs come out for the Duress and no more lies. I think there's a little more room here. The Grim Bobble, maybe the lockdown's got to come out. So I could see a Ghost Vacuum or 2 coming in.
Yep, sounds good. And then from Robert's side, what do you want to bring in against Pixie here? I don't see any of the best sideboard cards against the Hopeless Nightmare deck. The Balos, the Wiltleaf Lieges, the old one where you say, I'll play this, and you're like, great. Smash that 4/4 into play.
Yeah, not a ton, honestly. Realistically, more of the same. Just trying to kill things, stay alive.
Do you like Tidebinder to shut off maybe going to level 2 or?
I think it's okay. The fact that it can't block a lot of the flying creatures makes the body a little less relevant. I don't know. I think it's all right. For the most part, though, I don't think much is going to change for Rob.
Hear me out. Rob brings in the Ghost Vacuums. To counter the Ghost Vacuums of Sophie, before she targets something, Rob says, I'll target it. 2 vacuums fighting it off.
I would love to see a Ghost Vacuum game of chicken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you can activate? Because I'll activate if you can activate.
Oh, you're not going to? Okay, I won't either then.
That's fine.
Yeah,
sure.
fine.
We'll just sit here. Fine. Yeah. Whatever.
These vacuums won't be doing any cleaning whatsoever.
No problem. Oh. Dirty house.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Too bad. We're not cleaning it. All right, players getting ready here. But before we get into that, Jim, our next event's in Hartford. Tell us about this event.
Yeah, very, very excited for Hartford for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
This is kind of close to a hometown event for me. I'm right down in Long Island. And we're playing Standard again, regional championship. Just doing it all over again, basically. This event in 2 weeks. However, East Coast, of course, is great for me. But we're going to see the development from this tournament to that tournament.
Yes.
A lot of metagame shifts and so on and so forth. Players who might not have been qualified for this one are qualified for that one or vice versa. So it's going to be very, very exciting. May 16th to 18th. All information at starcitygames.com/SGCon. And, of course, a bunch of other great events, too. Even if you're not qualified.
Yes.
There are last chance qualifiers on Friday. We're going to have a command zone, right?
Yeah, always there. You can play some Commander anytime.
At the command zone, various events. You can win big cards, play various formats, different games.
Yeah.
Just so much going on. And just come down and hang out.
Absolutely. Hartford's going to be a lot of fun. And, like you're saying, we're seeing the adjust from Bologna right now. I hope I'm saying that right, y'all. If not, very sorry. But, we see the adjustment already from that RC, over in Europe and stuff. And I think the biggest change was just much more is it. That was the biggest. There was kind of a lot of changes, Red was a lot more popular there. It fell off a cliff here. So it's really interesting to see these shifts from week to week because the players who are going to play in Hartford, the players who are going to play in RCs next weekend, they're heavily invested in watching this show right now, checking out the results of these regional championships, looking at the data, that we'll see Frank post when it comes to the metagame breakdown of what deck had a great win percentage against another deck. And that's kind of why we saw Oculus be at such high numbers because, well, Izzet didn't lose to really anything except Oculus. You know, that was the matchup. Maybe Orzhov Blink as well had a good matchup against it, but that paints a good picture of what people will play at the next RC. So if you're trying to level people, you try to be, do you want to be at level 1? Do you want to be leveling the people that are trying to level? Like, it becomes a whole game of chess when it comes to just choosing which deck you want to play.
Yeah, I think that last weekend was the breakout of Izzet.
Yeah.
This weekend is the establishment of Izzet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, that wasn't a joke. Here it is. It's very, very serious. Next weekend we can see, all right, who wants to beat it?
Yeah.
You know,
or can you beat it? You know, like
right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think it's very beatable.
Same.
I think, you know, establishing. We saw I was at Raja at the main deck, Loran's. Like, decks going to adapt. You know, whether they're a established deck adapting or a newer deck. But coming around on what do I need to do to beat this Izzet deck? How does the metagame change, and how do I need to change with it?
Yeah, and I mean, from what we saw from our last regional championship, Team Breach was not as high of a play percentage as this deck. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, hey, that deck was busted, this one is too. There were a lot of factors that went into people not playing that deck at the last RC. But, you know, for this one, pretty easy to get these Izzet cards. Most of them, you know, have been around for a while, so it will be interesting to see people heavily adjust to it for the next one.
It's also a pretty straightforward deck, too.
Yeah.
You know, like if I want a modern RCQ or whatever else it might be, like cast cantrips, play prowess creatures, just do the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, a couple lands and a pass here. We do see that Overlord from Sophie should be at a impending less, right?
It seemed like there was a slight acknowledgement of missing that trigger.
Yeah.
Not going to matter.
Not matter at all. Which that's always weird because, you know, the impending when this comes off can be a huge advantage to have it not come off sometimes, you know. So that is always slightly strange to miss that one. But you can miss anything here at competitive IRL. So always got to be on top of everything here. Milling over some more cards. Picking up the Kieran. And
nope. It's just
okay.
Just gonna say Kieran over Pixie is interesting. Means possibly a flash game once you play. Maybe no more lies in hand for Sophie, but gotta take Pixie.
The cheaper, more efficient threat.
Yep.
Pixie is just a better Kieran, right? Even though the fact that Kieran's instant speed, there's some of the cute stuff that people were doing with like the Hex Mage where, you know, you get to bounce the token, the roll, and draw a card, those kind of things. But overall, Pixie is still just the superior card, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I think for the most part. I think that the trickiness of the instant speed thing, it can matter when you need to like leave up mana for a kill spell against like a red deck and then want to play a threat either way, but efficiency is pretty key here.
Totally agree. So Get Lost, getting rid of that Overlord, maybe not the thing you want to be doing right away, but when you have Pixie, you have Fear of Isolations and stuff like that, you got to just kind of deal with it now because Fear of Isolation doesn't wait for the spell to resolve. You pick it up as you cast it. So I like Robert being proactive there.
Pretty interesting here, a few things. If the Kieran had been taken, you can bounce a map and draw a card. So possible future consideration there, you know. But we see it's not quite Hopeless Nightmare. But it's so important to find the first one. It's a viable proxy here in the discard effect of the Breaker.
Yeah, Momentum Breaker coming down, forcing the discard, sending back to Robert. And Sophie's got to be feeling pretty nice about the fact that she just never has to worry about a Wiltleaf Liege, a Bailoff. Like, I feel like you're always holding your breath when you're, you know, playing in a post-board game with these Hopeless Nightmare or Momentum Breakers.
Yeah, you got to play one. You got to keep them honest.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, you got to make them think, hey, maybe I should side out some of these. This could be bad.
Put the fear of God in them.
Yeah. Play one in the main. Next level it up.
You're not going to sell me.
All right, so we're seeing the flip side of the Regent. Like, we can save time. You can shuffle this if you want. Well, Robert figures out what to discard.
This is classic Rob Seder of A, knowing all the tricks for trying to save time in a control matchup.
Yeah.
B, still being at 20 minutes left in the start of game 2.
Rob's catching some strays from you here, huh, Jim?
It's all love. It's all love.
All love, for sure, for sure. Who do you think has won more of your guys' meetings, you and Rob?
Probably me.
There we go. There we go.
More strays.
Love it. Love it.
Actually, the MTG ELO project got updated for a lot of the Star City stuff.
Okay.
So I could go on and check.
I think you should.
No IQs and stuff, which is where we played a lot in the IQ days.
Sure.
Playing local IQs, we're always in the same scene and stuff, and play a lot of IQs. But Opens, GPs, you can check all that.
I just moved to Virginia, for that last year. I moved in late 2019, so I got one full year on the tour. I was in 6th place on the leaderboard, in my element, and then, pandemic kind of ended everything there. So I probably don't have the best elo, but I had such a blast playing on that tour every single weekend, traveling and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. You don't got to tell me.
All right, so here is the Kieran responding with Cryptic Command at home.
Rob's also cast a lot of Cryptic Command.
Yes. All right, drawing some cards, discarding a card here. And things looking great for Rob. Rob has maintained a pretty high life total. This Momentum Breaker not being a hopeless nightmare has saved Rob's 6 life. And discarding a Lockdown. Number 1, we know that they left in a little bit. And number 2, that's got to be kind of a bad sign for Sophie, as Lockdown doesn't look horrendous right now.
But also, the Dragon gives access to it also. So we could see next turn Dragon and Lockdown.
True.
For a 2-piece of play a threat and kill all your stuff, too.
That is very true. That is very true.
Now, some fear there with Lockdown against these Pixie decks, what you put under the Lockdown can be quite scary. So if the Breaker goes under the Lockdown, now at this time it would kill the Dragon, too. So,
yeah,
Lockdown's scary. I don't love Lockdown against Pixie decks. You put yourself in a spot where a lot of times your opponent, if they're clever, can really kind of find the right time to unleash all of their cards and do a lot of damage.
Yeah, but you said it, for Robert, how's he going to, get to time and draw the match out if he's not playing cards that stall things out, whether they be good or not?
That is true.
Discards change the equation. And, you think that is a green and red card, an anti-green and red card playing against the Esper deck, but still good enough as basically every card from Sophie is mana value 2 or less. So still has a ton of text here. I love changing the equation right now. I think it's great.
I agree. And I also just love the design if he's not just Boyle or hard hoser. The kind of card where it's it is extra good against these people, but still has, some utility.
Yeah, I remember the days of Aether Gust when those type of decks were so good. It was an auto put 4 of those in.
Yeah.
Change the equation, I think, is a better design where, it's not quite as good as that, but still has some good applications in the format.
Yeah, I've definitely Lithomatic Barrage, non-white or blue creatures for 1 damage before. Deep Cavern Bat. It's got to die sometimes.
Get it out of there.
Which is great.
It's got a map counter on it. Well, good game.
Yeah, oh well.
Yeah.
2 Barrage then.
All right, an attack for 4 coming in. Robert goes down to 12. And now the pressure's on. Now Robert does have to start shifting his focus to controlling these flyers, as if Sophie can ever have a counter spell to really push through. This game could really end in a tempo-y style game in favor of Sophie here.
Right, and this is where the dynamics of the pre- and post-board games change a lot.
Yeah. The signature smirk there from Robert. You don't know if it's all right, I am dead kind of smirk, or if, that's just a good play, but I have the answer type smirk.
Yes, which counterspell do I want to play here?
Yeah. So there is the Tidebinder to pick it up in the first place, I believe. So this Pixie is a 1-mana, 1/1 ground creature at the moment.
See, now this was my fear with Tidebinder, where countering these effects is pretty good,
yeah,
but the body's so irrelevant. All the attackers right now fly. If this could trade with the Fear of Isolation, that would be great.
What are you talking about? It can trade with the Pixie. It can eat the Pixie. It's a ground creature.
Sure. I guess that was lost flying.
Jim, keep up, man. Keep up, bro.
Right, well, Tidebinder's dead anyway, so get out of here, Tidebinder.
Yeah, there we go. This town bounces the Pixie that had no text to regain its text, and Momentum Breaker deals with the Tidebinder, and overall, that didn't look too impressive of an exchange for Robert.
Yeah. Bodies are still in play, value's still in hand, these maps are still hanging out also. There's also an Anchorage hiding in those lands too, so a lot of good for Sophie here.
So let's see, is this the lockdown? Nope. Stock up number 5. And we'll see. Picking a couple cards here. Not sure what we got. And 4 mana being tapped for a Beza. It's going to come with fish. That's going to come with life. And that looks, and it looks to be a card as well. So, I mean, this Beza did some work.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah.
Just a really good card.
So good. Hard, I mean, there's so many matchups where like, this doesn't feel like a Beza matchup. The amount of times I was siding this card out is very minimal.
Right.
Like against like Azorius Omniscience.
Just play it.
And even then, like,
play it, draw a card.
Yeah, even then I'll trim 1, maybe 2. But otherwise, when you're on the play with a Beza, you're pretty likely to have a 4-mana, 4/5, gain 4, draw a card if you play enough pain lands, Pretty easy to get under the amount of life of your opponent playing a control deck. Storm Chaser's Talent into pick up Storm Chaser's Talent into likely play it again. So now Sophie's got a very nice wide battlefield here.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And realistically, sweeper-wise, because Rob is so deep in on lockdowns, only the sleepers here are 1 split up and 1 day judgment. So, and there's so much stuff now that a lockdown would be scary, you know, in the face of possibly an end step this town or so on and so forth. So Rob has some work to do.
Definitely. Now, lockdown with a dragon maybe would be pretty solid here, depending on what kind of action Sophie has back. But this is kind of the turn you need to do it because Sophie is very much representing that level 2, the Storm Chaser's Talent, get back this town, have that ability to always do that same kind of loop and keep the value going. So, yeah, Robert definitely has to do something here.
It's also the fear of that the clock's starting to get a little low, and this is more dangerous for Rob than Sophie because of Game 3, if Game 3 is going to end in 5 minutes, Sophie probably won.
Exactly.
So the pressure's on Rob, and the pressure's on any control player. You're playing control in a tournament. The clock is also your enemy.
Yep. The classic dynamic of a control player fighting the clock. Always difficult. But if anything is going to help out, it's going to be Chico bringing back temporary lockdown. Okay.
Ooh, good play.
Now, this doesn't go to hand, right? Because it's a copied token.
Right.
The lockdown, yeah.
So it makes a token. Also important to note that with the trigger on the stack, the lockdown will never actually work. So nothing actually will leave the battlefield because it was never actually in play when the ability resolves. So this will not kill the otters. Everything else will stay in play. And this is a big game.
Is it better to let the lockdown come into play, though? I guess, no, you still have to, because you won't have any permanents left to be able to bounce, huh?
That is true also. But even then, you would still lose an otter in the exchange. You only get 1 otter back. True. So
definitely worth it here. So Get Lost at least is breaking up the loop, Right. Robert will be able to keep the fish. Those are the 2 dice there for anyone unsure on that. But now there is still a dragon. Oh, my God, the Ghost Vacuum was brought in. Yes.
All right. That's one half of the Ghost Vacuum battle.
Now did Sophie bring in the battling vacuum? Okay, but now there still is a big dragon problem.
Yep. It's funny that the fish are there, too, so they can chump block the otters a little bit.
Yep.
Dragon's huge. And, the Pixie deck is notorious for not being great at killing larger creatures. It can bounce them.
Yeah.
But as far as outright killing them, you have a few.
One go for the throat.
Right. You go for the throat. Breaker would work if they're for fish in play. But for the most part.
An exercise in the board. Yeah.
Well,
there is the one of go for the throat.
Sure. Okay.
Why play more than one?
Yeah.
Only one dragon that needs to die?
Yep.
Love it.
That is big.
That really is huge because now we have 6 power, maybe 7, 8, 9 power. Oh, Hopeless Nightmare. So that's a counter. You could turn those 2 lands into +1/+1 counters too. 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9 damage, putting Robert to 3 with a Hopeless Nightmare on top. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too shabby.
One more land here would be pretty solid to force Robert to have to gain some life here. And this could be the nightmare scenario for Robert. Head to Game 3 with sub 10 minutes. Still winnable at 10 minutes,
For sure.
From both players. But looking scary.
Also, maximum velocity.
Oh, that's the most important part so far.
Speed up.
Sophie can gain that 4 life whenever she wants. When you got that 2 mana, you know?
Yep.
Woo. Okay. Now that's pretty spicy. Dragon underneath the Ghost Vacuum. Now there isn't the lockdown anymore. Those get exiled. You don't get to just keep doing that. But now for 6 mana, you can get a 1/1 that does something. A Braid, get lost, stock up. None of the options good enough, though.
Yeah, still a lot of flyers, you know.
So that'll be a future plan.
Yeah, the actual dragon itself is not really a viable blocker, given all the flyers have 2 toughness.
Yep.
So a lot of work for Rob to do here.
Yep. But hey, if you're not going to win the game, might as well get some light vacuuming done, you know?
I hate dust.
All right, separating our mana off here, figuring out what we want to play. And, yeah, against these Pixie decks, you just don't want to leave in a ton of sweepers. Sweepers are not that great, but, you know, Robert's Kingdom for a Day of Judgment right now would look phenomenal.
Yeah. Honestly, it's funny. Split Up would be the best one here.
Yeah.
Because the only threatening creatures right now are the flyers. You know, the otters are blockable with the Beza or the fish. I said fish. But so Split Up would be ideal. There's 1 copy there. But yeah, something to mop these things up is going to be very, very important.
I think Robert will be okay if it's Day of Judgment, not Split Up, but I'm with you. That would be a little bit better.
Yeah.
All right, that doesn't look like the face of someone who just drew Day of Judgment as we're scooping it up. Heading to Game 3 with 8 minutes and 45 seconds left. Woo! Rough.
I'm getting a little nervous.
Yep.
I'm starting to feel those control player, anxiety.
Yeah.
Just look at the seconds tick away. You know, they'll probably start this game with maybe 7 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which isn't too bad. You know, but it requires some pretty fast, crisp play.
Yeah.
And does favor Sophie, obviously.
I do think you summoned this to happen to Robert here, you know?
Listen. He did it to himself.
Okay. I like it. All right, looking at the sideboards, play draw. Is this the type of match where you want to see those differences in? Or, you know, the new variable that entered the equation here, does Rob try to sideboard in an aggressive manner now? Do you just get every card that can attack? You know, or are we not quite that low yet?
Yeah, I think that I would slant towards more bodies, creatures, kind of things, whatever.
Get those lockdowns out of there, more 3/1s into play kind of thing?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
I think that also you don't want to spend too much time doing that, though. Because if it takes you an extra minute and a half to change your deck to do that, have you gained or lost in that exchange?
Okay.
You know, and realistically, I don't think, it's not like there's, Geist of St. Trout or some, crazy, like a Voice of Victory kind of card. You know, where it's not really for this matchup, but it does attack for 3. I don't think we'd be going that deep if it was there.
Flanker can be a 4/2. It could maybe be a 5/3. Depending on how many creatures have died, you can get that creature nice and swole.
I feel like I have never seen that mode used.
I have never seen that mode. I literally have never.
Yep.
You know, but
like you said it, I'm like, what in the world's pumping this? Oh, right, it has a 3rd mode.
It does have a 3rd mode. Yeah, let's get that text off there. Unneeded. All right, Game 3, big game for these players. Winner of this game, straight into Day 2. You know, of course, when we are talking about Round 6, that's not the most important thing, but still a factor. Parlor, get that Tidebinder into the yard.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think that this control deck that Rob is playing is reasonably well suited to end the game.
Yeah.
You know, Shiko, River Regent, you know, it is not your typical draw-go control deck. You know, a lot of the blue-white control decks, you know, are mostly just playing like Jace and like a few Meringue River Regents as the win condition, nothing else. This deck can go faster than that, so that bodes well for Rob. But pace of player is still going to need to be pretty important. And then also, if Sophie can just have a decent draw, it stops being about how fast can I win and more about can I win.
Yeah. No, yeah. The best way to stop your control player from, you know, getting this aggressive draw to beat you, punch them in the face. Not literally, of course, on the battlefield, but if you can just distract your opponent so much, they're trying to play fast, you know, and you can just close the game out, you can end up having a big advantage. Left exercise on the top. How do you like that?
I kind of like that, actually.
Okay.
I like having the insurance policy against larger creatures, against lockdown. You know, already have a pretty good board right now. You know, we've got multiple power in play. a talent in our hand, maps ready to go to. So
Yeah.
I like it. Good insurance policy.
I like playing Magic tournaments and not having to exercise, but whatever, you know. I mean, still sometimes needed.
Yeah.
All right, and there is the Preacher. A solid 1-2 curve here.
Now, normally Preacher is like a little, against the slower decks. It isn't that fast of a clock. But it actually, never mind. Just kidding. I was going to say it lines up really well against the Lightning Helix's temporary lockdowns, but the one-off Day of Judgment makes me shut my mouth. I'm going to stop talking. Corey, keep calling the game.
Well, please talk. It's your job. We need you. So, Robert slammed that Day of Judgment, though. Felt very good about the curve out with a 3-drop creature. Didn't have a Spell Pierce, any kind of interaction like that. And now, hey, if Robert can slam a Chico, get lost something, sweet. We're cooking.
Yeah, and it'd be easy to look at that and be like, well, why did Sophie just play into that Wrath?
Yeah.
But that was a very good play.
Yeah.
Day of Judgment was literally the single card that could stop that.
And how many are in the list?
One single copy.
Yeah, you can't play around the one-of too much here.
Whereas, the Preacher plays phenomenally against Lockdown, Lightning Helix.
Split up.
Yeah, all of these other cards. So kind of bummer for Sophie, but got to keep battling.
Yep, 100%. Everyone can say, she overextended there. No, I would have done the exact same thing. Can't play
faster.
around one-of. Yeah, yeah.
Would have slammed it.
All right, Overlord being impended. Get some stuff going, and 4 minutes left on the thing. There is the Tidebinder on the enchantment. Now, this doesn't shut it down for good.
Right, Tidebinder shuts down planeswalkers, artifacts, and creatures permanently, just to stifle.
Is a creature, but it's an enchantment right now, so that doesn't completely stop it. We'll still have an impending counter that goes off at the end, right? Or
correct.
Okay. If we remember, of course.
that is true. Not a given.
All right, Otter coming on in.
This is currently a 1/1 Otter, correct?
Yeah, looks to be.
Not
okay.
for long.
Yep. There is the bounce. Gonna trade with this Tidebinder.
Rob, we can't be taking notes right now. Right?
Yeah. And there's the 4. Now, if Rob wants to have any hope of winning this game, you got to feel like this is River Regent time, this is Chico time.
Yeah.
Or, at some point, if we're really out of time, Robert will try to be like, I'm a control deck, let's play for the draw. Can definitely happen, but love this play.
Yep.
Robert wants to have a chance of winning. This is the start of it.
Yeah. Dragons are bust here. And we got Dragon number 1's come on down. And again, on Sophie's side, the one-of go for the throw. We saw it last game. Our Breaker works. Breaker's in hand, right?
Yeah, we knew about that from the This Town. We knew about this as well from the This Town. So, now it doesn't look like Robert has a lot of cards in hand. Even if it is like a River Region or something, I just don't picture that not getting, momentum breakered or anything like that. So, going to be a very, very tough game for Robert to win in this time frame. There is the River Region, but I think this is Robert saying, like, I could lose the game very, very fast if you just play this region, kill an Otter, destroy a map. This might be Robert slowing down and being like, all right, I got to play to not die here. Sophie's ahead, has too much going on.
Yeah.
Not saying for sure that's the case, but that might be going through his head.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, casting it with the clock so low,
Yeah.
I was a 15. It's not like that close to death yet, but.
Yeah. But have you ever drew cards?
I have, and it is kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean.
You make a very valid argument.
That is the worst card to have in a control player's deck. You just. In your vision, it blurs out the right half. You're just draw 3 cards, discard a card at instant speed?
Yep.
Control players are never casting that other side. Let's get real. All right, and this is Sophie getting busy. Get lost on the land. Looks like we were already in combat, so you're not like you're going to float it, sack a map or anything like that. Otter's coming down.
A lot of maps. Yeah, a lot of resources on Sophie's side here.
Yeah.
The maps. Some good value this towns and stuff. Has a threat in play.
Most importantly, speed 1.
That is also true.
Yep. which I feel like we should be at max speed already, but it matters so little.
Yeah.
You know, both players are like, whatever. It's not worth wasting the time to get more max speed. Counter draw, Cryptic Command here. And we're facing down that 20 seconds. You know, if we can, whoever's turn it is when time gets called, you know, gets those 3 turns, right? Yeah.
All right.
There it is. The clock's coming down. The spotter's about ready to tell him.
Diving in.
This should be time. And this should be Robert at turn number 1. And that's got to pretty much mean that Robert can't really win, right? I guess with 0 resistance, you can drop a dragon, attack, Shiko, Helix, you know, those kind of things. But any resistance from Sophie here should guarantee she's not going to lose this match. Now she just still wants to be able to win and keep that perfect record.
Yeah, it would be really tough, right? It would need to be 6 power dragon this turn, and then attack for 6, and then attack for 6, and then like some sort of double helix.
Yeah.
Something.
And I think it's going to be tough for both players, to be honest. Like, it's not looking super obvious for Sophie to be able to get this going.
I mean, the otter's pretty big, you know?
Yeah. This otter's swole.
Yeah.
It's been hitting the weights. Looks like they're double checking, make sure. Oh, I think I know what happened. The time got called over the intercom, but the feature match players have their separate clock, so they're like, was that the time or is this the time?
Got it.
It's the classic, come on, give us one more turn, Judge.
Yeah.
You heard it.
I don't know if Rob wants another turn at this point.
Yeah, good point, good point. All I got to know is you really summoned this, you know, potential draw here.
I mean, I wasn't making stuff up.
You weren't lying in the booth.
I wouldn't lie to y'all, you know?
Yeah, Jim keeps it real. All right, there is Robert doing some exercising.
It's not often you get to exercise a otter token.
Yeah, no kidding. That might be the first exercise on an otter ever.
Yeah, like sorcery speed.
Yeah.
Destroy evil, sure, but exercise.
Yeah, no kidding. Kept that on top so long ago. Or no, sorry, Sophie kept hers on top. All right, turn number 2. Sophie will get one more turn to attack. So, you know, the avenue for her to win is sure, maybe get threat going here. And then on her final turn, it's the, I need to find Hopeless Nightmare, I need to bounce it, and I need to do that often.
A lot of lava spikes.
Yep.
Or bolt waves, I suppose, for any standard tournament.
Yeah, there you go, there you go. Here is the Preacher. And playing another land. Let's see if Sophie has any follow-up. Nope. And now Robert is well and truly playing for the draw here. Impossible for Robert to win the game. Yep. There's the Get Lost on the Preacher. And that's got to pretty much lock it up, huh?
Yeah, so with one more attack step for Rob, not even close to enough. And then Sophie would need to pull out 4 Hopeless Nightmares here.
Yeah.
Which maybe boss.
Yeah. Okay. Man, if this Momentum Breaker was a Hopeless Nightmare, there is no getting around with it. Robert would be dead.
Yeah.
Robert would be in REM sleep, you know, getting nightmare after nightmare on repeat. But instead, this Momentum Breaker just did not matter. You know, the Momentum Breaker is Hopeless Nightmare 5 and 6.
Yep.
Of course, it can have its application as well. But looks like a draw between these two players. Bad news, they drew. Good news, they're both still undefeated.